In this video, we are going to learn about how to put in 3 backgrounds and code them so that our game runs smoothly. For this game, I am going to be creating a whack-a-mole type activity. I'm going to make it baseball themed, but if you are making a whack-a-mole game, you can theme it whatever you like. This video will show you how to do the backgrounds for any type of game, not just this one. If you would like to continue with the whack-a-mole theme, you can watch the next 2 videos in this series to help you complete your activity. All right, so we're going to start. And since we are working on our backgrounds, I'm going to move this out of the way. Let's go ahead and get rid of the sprite that they have for us and just start with a blank screen. You are going to go and find your background by clicking right here. Keep in mind, you are welcome to go and find backgrounds on Google, or if you have a picture you would like to upload, you can absolutely do that. Scratch does provide a lot of really good backgrounds though. And for my activity, I'm going to make it baseball themed. So I'm going to be using both of these. I'm going to go ahead and pull in baseball 1. I'm going to go to backdrops. I'm going to get rid of this blank one. We don't need a blank one. And at the bottom, it's going to allow me to choose more. So I'm going to now pull in baseball 2. All right, so I can move these around in whatever order I want. I actually want to use this one as my first screen. I'm going to call this my start screen. It's important to label each sprite, each background, each costume, so that when you code later, it's easy to know which thing you are having do what. All right, so my second screen is actually going to be called my play screen because that is where the game's going to happen. I want a third screen in my games. This is going to be my end screen. It's where the game goes once the timer is up or all lives are lost. So I'm going to actually duplicate my first screen. To do that, on a Chromebook, 2-finger click or just a right click, and go ahead and choose duplicate. And again, I can drag that down, and I'm going to name this end. You'll notice that each background now has its own name. They have something going on each thing. Here we go. Now, on your start screen, in the requirements on the rubric, this is going to be where you put your directions. So to put directions, you can just click text. But if you have a multicolor background like I do and I start typing, it's not going to be as easy to read. So what I really recommend doing is to grab a little shape first, and you can change the color. Say I want my background, or that's the line. I want my background to be more of a red color. It's more of an orange. There we go. And then I can type on top of that, and I'm going to make my text either white or black, easy to read. There we go. Click start to begin. My game is going to be one where you have to hit the correct picture on our whack-a-mole game that we would build in class. So I would say hit the correct ball on game board when it shows on screen. All right. If I want to move this around, because notice it's not very centered, I have to click back on the cursor here, and I can do all sorts of editing here in backdrop costumes. Now, that's maybe not exactly how I want it, but it's fine for right now. I don't need anything on my play screen, and on the end screen, we're actually going to come back to this because I want to have an end screen that says either I won or I lost. That's going to be in a later code. So we have now created all of the backdrops that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and put the code in that's going to run the rest of our game. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to set up our lives, our timer, and our scorekeeper. That's going to be down here in our variables. So we're going to do lives lost, which means during the game, if you hit the incorrect picture, then you lose a life. So I want to make a variable called lives. Hit OK. And now I'm going to notice it brings that option over here. I also want to name a variable timer. And then I want a score variable so we can keep score. All right. So notice if they're clicked, they show up here on my screen. I think I would like to kind of move them around. I think I want my lives to be over here, the timer to be in the upper left-hand corner, and let's keep score down here at the bottom. I just kind of like it that way, but you can just click and move them wherever you want them. All right, so now let's get started with some code. Every code must start with an event. I am going to use the when flag is clicked only one time. This is going to be when it takes us back to our start page and it resets the entire game. I don't want to use it more than just this one time. So let's go ahead and say that when the flag is clicked and I want the game to restart, I have to switch my backdrop to start. So when I click on it, it takes me back to the start page. So notice that my directions pop back up when I did that. So I'm on slide 1 or page 1. All right, so when I am on this first screen, personally, I don't want to see the timer, the lives, or the score. So you can actually make these things hide. That's down here in variables. You have set, change, show, or hide. When I'm on the start page, I want all of these to hide. So I'm going to bring these over 3 times. Right now, they all say hide lives. Well, I can click the down menu, and now I'm going to choose hide score and hide timer. So now when I click the flag, they're not on this screen. That doesn't mean they're not there. They're just not shown on this particular screen. We're going to want them to pop up at a later time. All right. Now I also want to have, them pop up when I switch to the next backdrop. So we are going to go ahead and code it so that it will go to the next backdrop when I click on something that sends us there. We're going to get to that point later, but we're going to need this one. We're going to go ahead and find when backdrop switches to, and we're going to make this one play. So when I get to my play screen, I want all of my variables to show back up, and I also need to set them to the correct numbers. So we are first going to grab the set code 3 times. Set lives, set lives, set lives. And we're going to set score and timer. So we're going to set lives to however many lives you want to give in your game. I think I'd like to do 4. That way you have 4 chances if you miss. I'm going to set score to start at 0, and I'm going to set my timer to start again at 0. So now we are going to show those variables. They're set to these numbers. Now let's have them show. Show, show, and show. I got lives, I have score, and I have timer. So now when I go to that next background, these things are going to show up. We're also going to go ahead and broadcast a message here. We're going to call this one play ball, or you can have this say start game. You can type in whatever you want to call it, but this is simply going to broadcast to some of my other sprites later that the game has begun. We will use this later, but for right now, you just need to have it added in. Let's go ahead and create our timer. And in this case, we are going to use a repeat until. We did the timer together in class. And you are going to be using this code, the blank equals 50. But because we have 2 situations that could end the game, we don't just have a timer, we also have lives lost. We're going to grab one extra line. We're going to grab the blank or blank. We're going to put that in. And now we're going to grab the blank equals 50, but we're going to grab it twice. All right. So what we're saying is that when the game starts, we are going to repeat. The timer is going to keep going until either the timer equals 0 or lives equal 0. Because in both of those situations, our game would be over. So we are going to now create our timer, and the timer is going to continue until it equals 0 or lives equals 0. Either way, it's going to stop. Let's go up here to control. So if we've set our timer, we did set our timer earlier to 0. That's not correct. We need to set it to, you could do a minute, you can do 30 seconds. And for this, I'm just going to do 30 seconds. So I'm going to wait a second, and then I am going to change my timer by -1. By doing that, every 1 second that the game is going, 1 second is going to be removed from the timer. All right. So that's all you have to do for your timer. And notice that it will stop when it gets to 0 or when the lives get to 0. After this situation happens, so if timer is 0 or lives are 0, you are going to be ending the game. So we're going to broadcast one more thing. We are going to broadcast game over. All right. We have one more section of code to put in our backdrop before we can move on to creating our sprites. And that one is what happens when our backdrop switches to end, or how do we even get to end? Well, that's going to happen in events when I receive game over. So notice that happens as soon as the timer or lives equals 0. It's going to go to game over. We want to tell our computer to switch backdrop to end. Now, on this end, we want to hide some things too. Personally, I like to keep the score shown on your end screen so that the player can see what their score was. So I'm only going to hide the lives and the timer. But if you want to, you can hide all of them. All right, so this is the code that's going to be running in the background. In the next 2 videos, we're going to look at the other sprites that we need to add to make the game actually run.